Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in here. I'm Nick Pero, founder here at Banner and Backbone, joined by my good friend and colleague Shane Yirak, independent analyst, Firebrand Project, and just general Firebrand. Shane, we missed last week. I was under the weather. My back was hurting. You did a good episode, a little bit of an episode last week to give a primer on things that are going on.
Yeah.
How's it going, dude? How are you? Before we get into anything, we've got a good episode today,
Yeah.
all about the Iranian war and what the hell's going on over there. Shane, brother, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's been kind of everyone's mental health goes up and down, for sure. It's been kind of a rough week for me. But we have to kind of, adjust and do what's best for us, and our mental health, especially when times are tough like they are now. And I know that applies to everybody. So, before I go to anything else, I just want to say that I know things are hard right now, particularly just to be like an American. I just want to kind of recognize that and recognize everyone's effort in staying involved and staying informed in a time when there's so much financial stress, in a system where I think we're all starting to realize how little freedom we actually have when it pertains to our dependence on this economic system. So I just want to tip my metaphorical hat to each and every one of you for keeping on during this hard time, and keep your sights set on what will be, not what is. This is certainly not acceptable. This is certainly not something that can continue or we will allow to continue. And there is routes to a better future, particularly if we keep up this pressure on the capital class and these people who are effectively oppressors, using a system that keeps us trapped in financial instability, which is tantamount to indirect slavery. So keep it up, guys, and keep fighting, because this is not our future. I know it's hard. So tip of my hat to each and every one of you. But I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with Nick. I'm happy to do what I do best. I was kind of telling Nick before the show, we're getting to a point where, yes, it is chaos, but there's enough chaos for us to have some data, and I can do what I do really well. And that's what I get to bring to the table today for Palantalk. So I'm looking forward to that. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing much better this week. I was really bad last week. My back was all screwed up, and I took the time to actually rest and let my body recover. I needed to, and I let myself have that space, and I knew when I wasn't going to be able to do what I thought I was, or to the level I was, and that allowed me to reach out to Shane on Monday and be like, "Hey, dude, I can't today," and you understood, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate it that you understand, and you let me have the space I need for my body and my mental health and my recovery. And I'm glad we give each other that space when we need it, and the grace to take a day or two or a week off, so that we don't hurt ourselves, so that we can be effective. Because part of getting through this is you have to get through this. Like, we have to be able to get through this and continue to live a life. And so I needed to be able to take that time. And Shane, I appreciate you, my friend, for having the grace for me, because
I get it.
It can be really tough. And I feel like I let friends down when we don't do our community down when we don't do our shows on Monday. And I also know that it's okay that we take a week off. So I'm glad to be back, though. We've got a lot we're going to be talking about this week.
We'll
For
do what we can,
we're doing what we can.
I am going to be putting out this information. There's resources that I'm making, things you can go to, maps, real maps. You can go and look at all of these things that are going on. You can click in on each individual event, get specific information. There's 2 already. The most recent Iran update I put out, Middle East Iran update, is out. There's a map there.
We'll be putting that map up shortly for everyone to
put it up for everybody. We can kind of look at it. There's going to be an updated map coming out this week, and we're going to discuss kind of some tangential things that are going on. Hello to everybody. It is good to see everyone here in the chat. So thank you guys for joining us today. But I would say that, the toughest thing with the analysis and the deeper understanding of this conflict thus far is how poor the official sourcing is, particularly from CENTCOM. It's just pretty much all a bunch of BS. Historically, there's obviously something that I have been using for a while now, which you guys might be familiar with, which is the belligerent source rule. If a belligerent is providing information relevant to a conflict that is pertinent to a attack or the success of an attack against an adversary, we have to approach that with a certain level of discretion because they want to demonstrate success when they are not successful. The reason I had to come up with this rule at all was Israel, because they just don't. It's just, a total lie. We had to do this in the first week of the conflict, really, because they were both lying through the teeth, right? But CENTCOM in particular, because I love satellite footage. I love confirming things with satellites. And there really is just no argument. Things are happening, right? Like if there's a giant charred crater where a helicopter hangar was, I don't see how you intercepted that. And if you did intercept it, did you intercept it when it blew up the hangar? Did you just shoot a rocket at the hangar alongside it? So things like that are just, it's very contradictory to reality. And so we do need to be cautious with that as well. So there's a certain level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uncertainty in everything that we do here. And that's an important caveat, is we don't really know what they know. But we can figure out what's happening, because if you have enough surrounding context, you can draw a conclusion. There's never one way to the truth. So we're going to try and get as close to the truth as possible through what information is publicly available.
And that's all we can do, is we can dig at the truth with what's publicly available. Open source intelligence is what Shane does. And understanding and putting that picture together helps us make accurate and reliable predictions, but also analysis of what's going on. Shane's been before we even get into the map here, Shane's been calling out the interceptor shortage for months, and now it's coming out that there's an interceptor shortage officially on statements, or even leaked on statements. Well, we knew that months ago.
Sure did.
Shane knew that months ago and predicted that it was going to happen, and that how it was going to happen, and roughly how much was wasted. And you were pretty close.
I was pretty close.
Even if you're a couple percentages off, being that close is important right now, especially with open source intel, where you don't have all the information that the military does, and that they're either telling or not telling. And this is where it's important that we have folks like you come out and do this work. I don't have the time to dig through all this intelligence and to dig through all these satellite images and be able to focus on what I need to as well on top of Palantalk. Whereas Shane, that's your like that's your focus area. You do it really well. And
I don't know
so
how I did it, dude. I don't know how I
I don't know,
covered
man.
all the things I did for so long, because like just doing this takes me like a long time. So I mean, it is this is a funny comment. It's oddly satisfying watching things unfold now that Shane predicted months ago. I was telling Nick about this before the show. Like, partly I feel validated, right? Because it's like all of my work was right. Because I could have done all that work and all that analysis and been wrong about it, but I was pretty close, like Nick was saying. So like that's validating. But the thing is, I don't want to be right. I tell people this all the time. I want to be wrong. I want everything I say to happen to be wrong. So, unfortunately, it is that kind of conflicting. Yeah, exactly. There has to be some level of, because I guess at the end of the day, my work is this, right? So the more right I am, the more that increases my credibility as an analyst, right? As a new independent analyst, like these kind of things give me credibility. It demonstrates that I have the skills and the techniques, even though I'm outside of traditional institutions that do this work, that I'm credible and that I am good as well. Obviously, yeah, the famine, there's lots of things I talk about. And of course, the big thing about today is just another validation of all of that work. We're going to talk about rare earths, and we're going to talk about China, and we're going to talk about how cooked the Trump war machine really is, because it's pretty cooked. Well, it's like a steak. It's so well done. There's not a lick of red in there. It's kind of just a hockey puck. You could give it to a bunch of Canadians to use a nice little fillet, all right? One of those little 6 ounces, just a little hockey puck, and they cook that thing all the way through. So it is going to be an interesting discussion. But it's like, these are the things that we miss. Like, my discovery of this was actually just a passing scroll through a YouTube Shorts algorithm of, I follow one of China's like official European news outlets, right?
Yeah.
Like how we have all that kind of profit, but they were like,
How we used to, not how we do, how we used to.
All of them, and now we have no foreign influence campaigns going on as well. And so I'm just scrolling, and I see this thing saying that they have released new countermeasures targeting certain companies. MOFCOM, so the Ministry of Commerce for China, very important body, regulates all of their exports, imports, basically determines which companies are pretty much majority controlled by the state, which aren't. In short, over the course of the last year, since basically Trump came into power, they have been considerably tightening controls, particularly over entities that export rare earths, rare earth magnets, those important inputs into the the military tech industrial supply chain. And it's important to note that our decision in the United States to effectively use a handful of contractors for everything, and then to effectively integrate those same civilian companies, civilian tech companies into our military industrial complex instead of having alternatives, makes those companies that do a lot of domestic work vulnerable to dual use limitations and controls, which means if Google or Amazon is providing server support for the US military or the government in any way, that means that any kind of controls can now be subject or applied to, because an important trade term to understand is dual use. It means if something is used for both civilian and military infrastructure, they can limit that supply based on the military aspect. And these controls apply to a broader system. So that doesn't mean necessarily that the United States can per se buy those materials from Argentina after Argentina buys them, because then Argentina is subject to controls and limitations, penalties. So this is very similar to how US sanctions work, except the US sanction system is no longer as effective as it was. So what is effective is controlling the raw basic inputs of production. which China has done over the last 10 years, making them responsible for like 91% of the rare earth processing in the world. So this is not, this is the kind of leverage that the dollar gave the United States as the premier currency. It's the same kind of leverage. And it also makes an excuse to blow up civilians. So there's that aspect too. When, we want to bomb things in the United States, that's more the Israel United States angle of, there could have been a fucking military people in there. And if you don't think the IRGC knew that full well and put their missile launcher in the middle of a playground because they knew that the US would blow up kids or whatever the hell they do, then that's exactly correct. That is what they're doing. It is on purpose. They are not saints. They are very bad people. And speaking of, there has been in the recent days, just kind of something I was seeing this morning, a consolidation of power under the Houthi and the very, very hardline, non-negotiable IRGC factions within the government. So the IRGC has really strengthened its hold on policy, meaning that negotiations with the people currently in charge are a non-starter for them. So we do want to kind of keep that in consideration as we kind of go through there. But before I get too deep into anything, Nick, do you have kind of any thoughts, or what's your kind of take on all of this? At least kind of beforehand, before we get into
Now I want to let you get into it. I actually wanted to let us get into the map we'll start with Iran before we go into the China area. So I'm going to shift us over to our map, and I'll hand it off to you again, Shane, here for a little bit, and I'll start putting in my feedback and discussion as we go.
Yep. Always interrupt me. So, one of the things I liked about this map is we have a slider in there. So starting on July 12th. So Nick, you get to see how things kind of really popped off as you increase that slider, but you also see where the density of strikes is, which is very interesting, right? So you see Kuwait just go absolutely crazy here over the course of the days, right? And by the time you reach the end there, you are at 7 on Kuwait. And you keep going there in that whole wider region, right? It just goes absolutely crazy. There's a concentration of strikes and events there in Kuwait. Really important to note, that's where the United States keeps the majority of its HIMAR and missile, like ground-based missile rocket systems. They can sit right there in Kuwait and launch across into Iran. The targeting of that area, as well as its proximity to both Iraq and Iran, with Iraq becoming a potential, becoming a theater in general, with the involvement of the Saudi Arabia strikes on Iraq in joint effort with the United States against the PMF there. That went ahead and created a important, very traditional kind of Iranian proxy strategy, where Kataib Hezbollah actually came out and said if the Iraqi government does not properly respond, they will actually be the ones, they will step up and defend Iraq, right? Not so different from what they did with Hezbollah in Lebanon, where you had basically, as the traditional Lebanese government is in peace talks with Israel, as Israel is, launching Operation Eternal Darkness and bombing thousands of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people to death at this point, I'm sure, basically erasing entire villages from the air. So all of those things they're doing at the same time, it's not the Lebanese government that's fighting them, it's Hezbollah, right? So it's this weird dynamic where, yes, they are terrorists, but who is defending us from Israel? It's not the government, right? So you have to ask the question, in that situation, when the IDF is trying to bulldoze your town and the only thing between your home being bulldozed to the ground is Hezbollah, this creates a really important power dynamic in these countries that is very relevant. We need to be very considerate of the fact that that undermines the existing power, creating a vacuum where a entity like Hezbollah that effectively answers to Iran is now in the seat of power, whether that is the officially recognized government or not. Not so different from the Houthis in Yemen, who control that Sana'a right there. You can see it on the map. They've had that for quite some time in that bottom middle corner there, which allows them to control Bab al-Mandeb. And yep, if that's the case, in the comments here, they said the Lebanese government capitulated, requiring Hezbollah to fight back. So basically, there you go. They capitulate. So, with things like that, that effectively gives Iran proxy control over the country, or at the very least over the military body that exists. And Hezbollah is an important case study because it's actually like an officially recognized party in the Lebanese government that has its own armed forces. It's a whole thing. We could have a whole discussion about that, but it's intentionally kind of muddied because it allows proxies to kind of shirk certain state responsibilities while being combatants, right? And that's really important, that their priority is on military operations. And
the importance of Hezbollah and other armed terrorist-like groups and terrorist groups in those areas. You were talking about the power dynamic. It is a really important thing to discuss, because it's the old power dynamic of how does one country defend itself and or go on offense, and how does their neighboring country respond. And this is where the fact that there are no real diplomatic relations in the region outside of we're going to bomb you or we're going to bomb you back, like that is the diplomacy of the region. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy for Israel in this case, is they are producing a self-fulfilling prophecy of we are going to get bombed off the map, so we are going to bomb everybody else off the map, which then enables other nations around them to go, we're going to bomb you off the map, and then start bombing them. So there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there is that factor of who is willing to be the first to stop it. And so far, none of them have been.
Yeah.
Because the governments, at least in Israel, the government in Israel doesn't want it to stop. And their leadership doesn't want it to stop because it produces the fear and hate that they need to continue fueling their money that they get, their power, the fear that they create to make it so that they can continue to have service members and force people into service instead of allowing people to be in service of, say, the government in various ways on healthcare or access to scientific research. It's towards the military, and it's towards self-defense and annihilation. And the more you propagate or the more you perpetuate that, the more it is perpetuated back at you. And so this whole region is destabilized because it's been made to be destabilized. Like there is no winning in this area until everyone is willing to actually disarm and talk to each other. But that would require things like the US also being willing to disarm and talk to other people without the threat of continued violence.
Yeah. And that's a really important aspect, and kind of what you touched on with giving them more personnel, these groups, because if you think of it this way, and I firmly believe that if I'm 18, I live in Lebanon, and I watch my little sister, my mom, and my dad get blown up, and I'm the only one who survives. You better believe I'm going straight to Hezbollah because I want to kill them. I want to avenge my family. I'm seeing everything destroyed. It literally is the recruitment drive for the thing you're trying to get rid of. It doesn't work, but that's just kind of Israeli doctrine. There other things I saw this morning is Israel's digging a massive trench network in Syria, basically building a wall. They've been doing this for a long time, but they are annexing large portions of Syria. This has been happening while Gaza and Lebanon have been going on, but Syria has been going on for quite a while. They're finally talking about this again. Israel set up a secret base in Iraq, which was discovered by a herder. And that herder was then hunted down and killed by Israel after discovering this base that they set up in Iraq, which is clearly a major violation of Iraqi sovereignty, setting up a secret military base deep in the desert of Iraq. They have no permission to be there. So, this kind of all goes into this idea you're talking about, like undermining the regional governments, creating this instability, the funneling of money into these military organizations. That kind of motivation is supported by actions like, I don't know, Israel setting up a secret base and then killing the herders as they go around doing their normal business. That in the Iraqi government did what? Offered strongly worded condemnation, right? That's not enough for people when their loved ones die. You got to understand the human aspect of it too, in a big way, is that these are really people that are dying. A state saying that, oh, that's really bad, we don't like that, is not sufficient, motivation to quell that kind of discontent.
Well, and yes, and I want to respond to one of the comments in the chat,
Yeah.
because I think it's an important comment. Is we call them terrorists, but we never have a real conversation about Hezbollah or Hamas or subsets of groups fighting to defend their home. I'm going to push back on that comment because they are terrorists. There's that. Were they? Are some of them defending their homes? Yes. That is also a consequence of their actions, is they are defending some of them are defending their homes. They are also terrorist networks that are funded and used to harm on purpose, and their sole missions are to hurt and to kill Israelis in this case, or while we were there in Iraq and Afghanistan, to kill Americans. Yeah. They're terrorist organizations. They are terrorist networks. Their goal is not peace or prosperity for their civilian populations. They terrorize their own population too. And that's why we can also apply that same word to the Israeli government, is they are a terrorist government too.
Yes.
Because they terrorize their own people. They have caused endless conflict to terrorize their own civilians. Yeah. Because if you live in a state where you are being bombed all the time, of course you're going to live in some fear. Yeah. Because your house is never safe. Your home is never truly safe. But that's an environment that was created. It's just like we can call the US government a terrorist government at this point, because they're terrorizing the citizens of their own nation. And so I don't think there's too much, too much we can dig deeply into those organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas, because they are terrorist groups. That is their charter. That is what they were made to do, was not to help their civilian populations or to bring about peace or real change. It was to cause terror and harm people. And so I think we do have enough real conversations in general about those groups, because they are what they are.
Yeah. I think that to kind of strengthen your point, more than they are terrorists, because they're proxies of Iran's wider network that is composed of terrorist organizations. Their job is to undermine the civilian government and to expand Iranian control over local countries within the region, which is part of the stated Iranian strategy to expel US forces and deal with the Israeli threat. That is literally the stated mandate. They do that through terrorism. Like, that's basically, yes, they are fighting. And that's what we were saying earlier. It helps their cause if they become freedom fighters. They would be fighting people anyway. And if they weren't being invaded, they would be attacking the local government. They would be attacking and terrorizing those civilians. But the more legitimacy they gain, they do get to phase away from that terror and then make themselves legitimate organizations, which is what the Houthis have done largely. They have to be treated as a body that must be treated with some level of officiality because of what they control, that being the strait and passage over Bab al-Mandeb, right? Gaining that kind of authority does force the world to treat them as if they matter, which is the last thing we want, is insurgencies and terrorist groups to gain this kind of influence. But unfortunately, due to the instability in the region caused by Israel, the United States, and the wider effort in terms of just trying to shadow puppet an entire region to control and manipulate the price of oil and gas to enrich the uber wealthy class and the oil and gas companies, they've created this instability, which basically is leading to opportunities for terrorist organizations to legitimize themselves, which is exactly what Iran wanted.
Which is exactly what Hamas did when it became a political entity.
Correct.
That's like saying your abuser is a good partner just because they spoke up one time for you.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, right? They both can be true, right? I say that all the time. They can be fighting for the freedom of their country and also be, genocidal maniacs, right? Like, the RSF claims to be freedom fighters, but only for a specific ideological group, and they carry out massive genocides because they are fighting for the freedom of what they think is their cause, right? We have to understand, I think, and that's really the heart of what you're getting at, Nick, is that the motivations supersede whatever a stated motive they have, and their core motivation.
The impact supersedes the intent.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And the impact of these groups is that they cause terror.
Yes,
and that's why I included the Israeli government and the U.S. government. You could say that about the Russian government. You could say that about the Chinese government. They terrorize their citizenry to get what they want. And so
many states, right?
Many states.
Like that now. A lot of states are starting to feel that way as we start to see just the overall increase in authoritarianism and around the world. This is a real trackable, verifiable trend. You can see the degradation of overall civil liberties, freedoms, wherever you go. This is not a independent thing. I think this is largely attributed to the social drift in the direction of these kind of things, of us wanting to see people as people, of us not really caring about the long-standing beefs and rivalries that these states and the older controlling capital class has, because these are never our wars. They're wars between wealthy people in control, trying to gain control and influence. And the people, of course, always pay for that until they decide that they are no longer going to participate, which is a hard decision. I mean, it's a hard decision if you're enlisted and they say you need to go somewhere. And, I would say many of these people probably don't believe in what they're fighting for. I don't think they're getting really any kind of payoff They see the news, they see what they're bombing, they see that these people, they see that they're dying, and they're not really, it's not a war in your traditional sense. And I think that's a really important thing, is they don't see the enemy. There's not like someone in front of you can shoot. There's no tactical maneuver. You can't, outflank a missile that's shot from 200 kilometers away. There's no alternative. You're dependent on those systems. That are meant to protect you from this kind of threat. And if that system becomes vulnerable, there is no recourse. And that really just is what we're seeing. It is a global issue because of the prolific use of the Patriot system, which the US really pushed for its allies, whether that be in Europe, whether that be in Asia, wherever that is. It was a means of coercion and soft power by offering defense agreements and technology swaps, making them dependent on the United States for munitions. And now suddenly we're looking at a situation where there's not enough defensive capacity around to service all of these positions. Like there's absolutely no way that there's not installations somewhere in the world that had, Patriot capacity that is no longer there, or high altitude interceptors, THAAD systems that are no longer there, right? Because they've had to move those things. And even when we're moving those things, like we have to look at just the sheer amount of strikes on US positions, right? You can see Kuwait, there's 9. Down there in Bahrain, there's 3. You can see in the UAE, there looks like there's 2 down there, right? This is volume wise, the United States is hitting the same things that they've been hitting this whole time. And it's important to note that these strikes they're carrying out, they've hit these targets before, and Iran has not stopped in any realistic way. It has not loosened the control of Iran over the strait itself. These are not, new targets. In fact, the ability for Iran to move something from, Shiraz to Bushehr completely underground with a rail network is there, which means that probably the majority of the things that they are using are well and safe underground, as that is the doctrine that they've been using. They ran out of bunker busters in the end of April. I'm pretty certain they used the last ones to hit Isfahan's bunker system to try and get in and steal the uranium, which is when we had those special forces get surrounded, attacked, and quite possibly a great many of them were killed in that little city of Shiraz. You can see up there, that's where that took place, a little agricultural airfield near that location. I've looked at that satellite imagery myself. I've done analysis of that. I've looked at the distance of the cratering, the resources that were lost at the time. And you can clearly see that there was a considerable attack on a existing position. And of course, we have all of the records, the wreckage of, the helicopters and airframes used by the Night Stalkers that were destroyed at that airfield. So the reason I say that is the bombs that would have been capable of getting into these installations are no longer available, or we would be seeing them being used because they're the only thing that feasibly works against what they're doing. So at best, they're blowing up superficial things, but the tit for tat here is not the same. What Iran hits is important and irreplaceable. The United States is effectively using superficial. It's kind of symbolic, to be honest with you. It's almost like to demonstrate that they're doing something, but there is no result. So I kind of think with that in mind, this is one of those parts where we can start to look into the data look into the volume of where these strikes are hitting. And now we have Sentinel-2 data. It's not uncommon for us to basically get satellite imagery of certain Sentinel, Copernicus. They have a satellite that goes over everything just about every 2 days. So we can get decent footage of these bases. A lot of stuff is coming out with earlier strikes as well that they said they intercepted. There is a notable pattern between claimed intercepts and visible base damage, in many cases, annihilation of assets that they claimed to intercept. So I think that's a really important note here that just really highlights the importance of that belligerent source rule. And, you know, I think that there is supposedly an unofficial pause going on. But it's not that the United States has necessarily stopped. It's that the focus has shifted to the Houthis in Bab al-Mandeb, which is, as we were talking about earlier, effectively Iran, right? So there was Iranian officials going back and forth pretty frequently from Yemen. It was a strike by Saudi Arabia against a airport, I believe, that kicked off everything with Iranian and Houthi officials were forced to divert and land elsewhere, which resulted in a Houthi escalation against Saudi Arabia, the closure of Bab al-Mandeb to Saudi ships, Israeli ships, and U.S. ships, basically demonstrating the capacity for a wider overarching blockade of Bab al-Mandeb, which then has us looking at a situation that, when you look at Saudi Arabia on the map, you see how vulnerable it is. So there's one other way out, and it's the Suez at the top left. But the Suez is very limited, and there was a strike there in Egypt. I think that is interesting, kind of just demonstrating maybe that through somebody, one of the proxies, launched a drone, basically hit a U.S. ship. So kind of just calling that into question as well, as Bab is closed, is important. It allows for some hesitation. Particularly, we want to talk about, there's a second layer to this, which is the insurance companies, right? A ship will only sail if it's insured. The insurance companies are going to raise the premium after going through Suez, after that strike, right? So it's just another layer of economic deterrence. So Saudi Arabia now has no way to export its super large oil tankers because they can't transit Suez. They're too large. They require deep water ports. And the only ways out are through Hormuz and Bab. So you also have to consider now that Saudi energy basically as a whole is non-functional, because the way they were getting around the Hormuz blockade is through a pipeline that basically runs horizontally, kind of diagonally, that allows them to pump oil to a small city called Yanbu. It's right there on that little, you see the Saudi Arabia, you go to the left, there's that little bump. It's not that one, it's the one above it. Yep, and then you zoom in Yanbu should be, if you keep going, a little more. There it is, right? There's Yanbu, right? So they pipe it all there, and then they can go out Bab, and they've been rerouting about 70% of their oil that way. So naturally, the Houthis closing that symbolizes a total blockade there of that. It's important to note that everything you're seeing there, Eritrea, Tigray, Sudan, they are all also in some form of conflict. So there's basically a wider regional war for control over these economic choke points that has been going on. And all of these regional powers have been involved. A lot of foreign interest in this. This is not like a limited thing. Everybody wants a piece of this quietly. And that region has been unstable. And it will continue to get more unstable as more conflicts, particularly one in Tigray, is going and popping off. So, there's too much really to cover, but it's important to note that there's massive regional instability on the other side of that whole area. So,
and this, again, this regional instability is all on purpose. Like the last 20 years where the US was in this region really heavily caused instability. years before that when other nations came in. This is not just a US issue that we created. Other nations have participated. Russia, Great Britain, when when we've all destabilized Afghanistan, the purpose is to destabilize this region because that creates economic uncertainty for everyone except for the executives who own different profiteering groups off of this, either war profiteers, oil executive, rare earth mineral executives, folks like that. This is all to gain more profit for them
Yeah.
and not to gain freedom for anybody else. This whole region is purposely destabilized. Um, and we continue to do more to cause harm in these areas so that oil prices remain high, rare earth minerals remain hard to get. There can be no lasting treaties. There can be no lasting trade
Agreements.
discussions and agreements. It is to enrich the folks in who have power in those areas and
Yeah.
not to support or do anything good for the populace.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for a good example of this is the UAE has been smuggling um, billions of dollars of gold from Sudan and taking it to the UAE, effectively blood diamonds, same thing. They are taking this from the terrorist organizations that's going through Ethiopia, where the UAE has a very strong relationship with the prime minister there. And that is then sent to the UAE, and that gold is refined and then sent to fucking Switzerland and sent into our global supply. So everything, you know, that's coming out of this region is just soaked in blood and used by foreign powers, like you said, to enrich themselves. So, you know, Sudan or UAE has a lot of gold refineries, but it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have a ton of gold. Kind of interesting, right? That they have all that infrastructure, but where's it all coming from at a premium? So, you know, with all of that in mind, I think that we've done a pretty good job kind of going over the regional picture. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about, you know, and then maybe you can give a little primer for this before we get into it. But when you're looking at a military supply chain, Nick, you have a couple things, right? You have peacetime requirements, and then you have wartime requirements. And wartime has a little bit of different pressures and stressors on that supply chain versus your peacetime. Maybe if you kind of want to maybe expand a little bit into that with your experience being in a war zone and seeing, you know, the use of resources in an active combat conflict versus maybe your time in basic or, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah. So one of the big there's very little difference overall in terms of what peacetime and wartime requirements are in terms of the basics. Is for both, the main requirement is you need to be able to supply your troops with food, ammunition, and shelter. And if you can't have those, you can't effectively run either peacetime operations or a war.
Yeah.
The munitions becomes a different requirement depending on peacetime and war, because peacetime is when you stockpile munitions. Peacetime is when you build, or historically and traditionally is when you build your stockpiles so that you have a deterrent where you say, my stick is bigger than yours, I'm gonna beat you with it.
Yes.
If you don't do what I want. Yes, that is peacetime, but it's peacetime under threat of war, which is what the U.S. has operated largely as a global policing force since World War II. Is we have operated on a semi-peacetime stance of, we are going to deter. It's the speak softly but carry a big stick mentality, which, yes, carrying that big stick does cut down sometimes on threats. And because we can hold two things at once and we can hold multiple truths at once, it also creates the environment where groups like Hezbollah and Hamas are necessities for other nations because they see us as the terrorists.
Yeah.
They see us as the invaders, which in plenty of history we are. And it creates the dichotomy. But talking about resources and what we need is during peacetime, one of the main differences in like supply chain and support aspects and pieces like that is during peacetime, your focus is on advancement of technology. Whereas during wartime, unless that advancement of technology is specifically needed to fight in those fights, your focus is not on the advancement or the acquisition.
Ukraine's a good example of what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Ukraine is the example of advancement under need, is needed advancement for themselves. It's tactical and strategical advancement more than technological advancement. They're not creating new drones they are creating new drones, but they're not inventing new technologies to pilot those drones or use them. They're using existing technologies and improving upon them in a wartime manner.
Yeah.
And they're leveraging what's there to learn from it and change their tactical and strategic mindset. Peacetime mindset isn't the same. Peacetime mindset is a different strategy than what wartime mindset is. But really, the heart of it is you need food, you need munitions, you need medical supplies, and you need shelter. And if you can't get those four things, you can't win a war and you can't win peacetime either.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect, right? So that is going to be a very good primer going into these numbers because I can tell you, one, they put out like an emergency request for shelters on day 3 for all vendors. So that should tell you something right there. They have definitely had trouble resupplying the blockade. I don't think they planned for that. Of course, the big talk here is going to be munitions and weapons.
Well, remember, this war was supposed to be over in 2 weeks, right?
Yes. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since the last 2 weeks.
5 months? So 5 months? No, over 5 months.
Keep adding those 2 weeks together.
The special military operation? Is it there? Is it Trump's special military operation? We literally made that joke, but like here we are in his special military operation. So you know, it is ironic. But the interesting thing is for us to really understand the long-term implications of the Iran war and our capacity to fight it, we need to look at something that we've been talking about all through 2025, which was the resulting trade war between the United States and China. Particularly, this all started off in 2025 in January, where 28 U.S. defense firms were added to an export control list. So this is not a total ban, but basically they've created an environment that is effectively a ban because all of the permitting process must be approved by the Ministry of Commerce. The Ministry of Commerce is currently making, those waivers and things harder. The companies that do the primary exports are getting, reduced. They're particularly those companies that sell to U.S. manufacturers were being limited, targeting Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, GD, Boeing, and Anduril. It almost seems like that's the entire military industrial complex right there. So in February 2025, they escalated, adding.
I'm surprised Palantir's not specifically on here. I know Anduril is, but that's a different organization.
Yeah, it's in the sphere. It might have been added later, and it might be listed as a civilian company technically because they're an AI company. But I don't know. It's a good question. But I'm pretty sure they're on there. We had more additions in defense and tech. 15 more on March 4th. And then on April 4th that year, they added 7 rare earth and magnets. This is where things started to get really hairy because, of course, we are entirely dependent on China for that. And we kind of paused for a while, and then things got really scary for a second in October of 2025, where they added a additional set of rare earth controls against that, and that made it was so bad that they paused. There was a pause in this from the United States and China. They agreed to a pause until November 10th. So we are very, very close to having that discussion again. And those controls in particular would basically just turn off our entire tech, manufacturing, military, industrial complex. But we didn't see much of anything until the war started again, till the war began, at which point in May, when the US was attempting to use sanctions to basically coerce and pressure Iran, China, for the first time ever, basically issued a blocking order saying to ignore those sanctions to Chinese companies purchasing Iranian oil, which has no precedent. Usually they have been doing that. I mean, it's important to note that settlements have been going on in yuan for a while now for the Iranian toll blockade. But what really happened here that starts getting very concerning here is the addition of 10 US firms. And the thing that caught my eye, more importantly, was the addition of MP Materials and USA Rare Earths, as well as 44 defense contractors. This came into effect on June 22nd. So this is literally, they've let the United States this entire time scramble around, go to defense contractors, put in these contracts, get all these things done, allocate the money. And a big part of this was the United States bought a stake, a big stake in MP Materials. It's the only currently functioning rare earths mine and magnets in the United States. Important caveat, though, is they have to send all of that off to China to be processed because they don't have that in technology. It's very closely guarded by China. If you know how to do that, they don't like to let you leave, right? So, but by adding our 2 major rare earth entities that the Pentagon has pretty much bet everything on because we need domestic capacity, that effectively turns off everything. And this is a procurement ban. This means that no one can buy it. And they put 44 defense contractors on there. So now we're looking at a situation where it basically, they've turned off our ability to supply our military industrial complex. And we know our reserves are already at critical levels just for the raw materials themselves, because we haven't been able to import since early 2025. So this is very interesting timing wise. And that's kind of what sticks out to me. And before I let you go, Nick, I just want to add in August 5th, so only 5 days ago, they started adding our scientific medical tech companies as well. Applied DNA Scientists, Stratum Reservoir, Atlanta Tech, and a couple others are now being added. So they're starting to expand beyond the defense industry into some of our more specialized companies there. Nick?
That's actually exactly where I was going to lead into, is one of the bleed-in effects or bleed-out effects that moving from a peacetime stance to a wartime stance does is it impacts civilian and private industry that are not related to military industry, because we do the same on our side to other nations too, is we blend the view that a civilian non-military entity is related to a military entity. We do this because we turn in the US during wartime, when the war machine is actually running, we turn civilian companies into defense contracting companies. We did it with auto manufacturers during World War II. They produced tanks and they produced Jeeps. That's where we got Jeep from, was we produced them to be a wartime vehicle. from a civilian manufacturer. We took civilian manufacturing and turned it into wartime manufacturing. What that does is it raises the price on civilian goods. That's another big step for when you get into wartime economies, is civilian goods and civilian good production drops,
Yep.
because the factories are being retrofitted and refitted to be military factories, to build munitions or to build machinery. Cereal companies, Kellogg used to produce wartime machinery.
Yeah.
And only recently, in the last 20-ish years, 30 years, I think, is they de-escalated their production capabilities. Well, those will get brought back if a wartime footing is required, if, say, the mainland of the US were to be struck. I'm not saying it is going to be. I'm just saying if something like that were to happen, or if the regional conflict were to explode into China taking over Taiwan, and do we let them? What happens when North Korea decides to push on South Korea in an escalatory way? We are doing military exercises right now in South Korea because North Korea has upped its stance and is putting troops in Russia and is increasing its posture. So we turn our own economy from producing goods for us into producing goods for the military. And that's one of the biggest shifts that we get on a structural level for civilians. Is the impact is your goods become more expensive and harder to find.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too. And as we talk about what you just laid out, that being the transition of these companies to military and wartime demands, it goes to show that that is technically what they should be doing. It is what they are trying to do, to be clear. It's that profit-wise, paying an American miner is expensive. Having a mine that meets U.S. safety standards is more expensive than having a pit mine in Somalia, where you don't even have to, where people can die and you continue production like it's no problem, right? Or wherever you're doing these things. So, but I want to kind of go over what is effectively the stack of controls that we're currently facing, because the will and the quote unquote capacity to build something is only possible if, just like Nick's saying, in fighting a war, you have your food, your shelter, your munitions, and your, what was the other one you said? Food, shelter, munitions, and medical supplies, right? So all of those things require inputs. You don't get a bandage. You need to make the material that then goes into the bandage, and then you can play it. But the bandage must be produced from some sort of raw input.
And every produced bandage that goes to wartime footing and to needing to be used in a conflict is a bandage that is not being used for a civilian here in the States, which could make us healthier and happier and live longer. And instead of, so all of this, and this has been a long history for the US, is instead of having nice things in the US and investing in ourselves, we have continually invested in a wartime footing, even as we went from the Department of War in World War II to the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this is an interesting part of it, because when I was doing this analysis, I wasn't aware how far back this went, but it says a lot about just how long this game has been being played. So the first note of important restriction, that being the slowing down of U.S. military, was back in 2023. So this is when Biden was in office, and controls were put on gallium and germanium licensing. Okay, so that basically means they have to jump through hoops to get the thing. Making it more difficult. What does this target in particular? Radar, semiconductors, and military communications. Okay, so we already are now facing additional hardship and sourcing capacity, right? So you can have everything you need, but if it requires a germanium chip or a germanium or gallium component to work, you have basically a dead radar. So it's dependent on all of these things. Back in October 2023, they put that on graphite. The United States was trying to rapidly scale its EVs. What did that do? That hit EV batteries as well as armor and carbon fiber composites that are an important part of our military equipment. And that's back in 2023. You started to get a tech ban in 2023, rare earth elemental processing. So they stopped exporting the knowledge of processing of rare earth. So that is a closely guarded state secret of China to maintain their control. That means that any tech transfer routes for US companies to do those processes themselves they're not able, or they do not have access to that information to replicate that. So things like that too, right? Like the alternative being we do it ourselves. It's not possible on a time scale that is efficient because we need to then discover the things they learned to build the machine. It's not like you can go on Google and be like, how do I build a germanium refinery plant? You have to then get a domestic person to understand, develop that technology. You don't get a template to build. It's more steps. So it's not necessarily stopping them. It's saying you don't get a leg up. You have to do it all yourself, which is another barrier in production. It's not necessarily saying, nope. It's saying you got to buy from us, or you can expend a lot of money, time, and resources to build it yourself. What do you prefer? We know what our capitalist oligarchs prefer. They prefer cheaper and faster and just-in-time manufacturing, which again is a huge problem when you're talking about wartime because you need a manufacturing. So if you're ordering just 2 weeks overhead for your product all the time because it's cheaper, then you're going to run into a system where when things escalate, it gets pretty extreme. So in December 2024, gallium, germanium, antimony, which is very important. Antimony is part of the primer for any explosive munition that we make. So we don't have a domestic antimony production. We have none available in the United States. They're trying to get one up and running, but that was, I think, MP Materials, and now they're facing certain restrictions. So I don't know how that works. It was suspended, however, during the 2025 rare earth truce. Okay. However, once Trump comes into office, he starts using tariffs, begins the trade war. This is when we start to see an escalatory pattern that is basically catastrophic. And we kind of went on it earlier, but now I kind of want to talk about what these things hit. So the rare earth refining ban, it closed the tech transfer route, no longer available. Gallium, germanium, antimony. We're talking about semiconductors, that night vision, radars, and armor-piercing munitions, bombs, things like that. Now, the April wave hit a wider spread of rare earth elements and magnets. All of our tech requires magnets, and China closely guards the capacity to build those magnets and make those things. So what this did in April is it basically targeted all of our defense industry, primary producers. That means the F-35 program is effectively stymied. Only what they had is what they could use. Their submarine programs was hit. Missile magnet supplies, so the ability to make interceptors and missiles, because an interceptor is a small missile with basically a small charge that shoots a bunch of debris up in the path of the incoming missile that will then hopefully disrupt the path or destroy it, causing it to detonate in the air. That's the goal. But of course, to do all those things, you need all kinds of little explosives and charge and things to create that explosion in the air. It's very expensive to do that. In June, NVIDIA and Qualcomm got a antitrust investigation. So that's AI chip directly, because our military decided to dual use everything, which means that all of our tech is now subject to basically scrutiny under their controls, which of course is a problem. December 2025, we introduced a unified dual use item list. So basically, all dual-use items and third country transfer restrictions are now in place, which means that we can't buy from somebody else. That country will be penalized if they sell to one of our companies. In May, this is the most recent wave. Starting here, what did those things hit? There was the MOFCOM blocking order. We'll talk about that really quick. We already talked about it, but basically it was the first time where China said, we don't really care about your sanctions. Thank you very much. We're going to keep buying Iranian oil and you can shut up, which is a big deal because everyone complied with US sanctions for forever, right? That was our like soft power move. And clearly China's not worried about that as much because the leverage they have supersedes the money. Money changes hands for products, but if you control the product, the ability to produce the product, you suddenly have more leverage than the person who controls the currency, which was the wider strategy for sure. In retrospect, brilliant, to be honest with you. It's absolutely brilliant. Everything they've done, not a compliment to them or what they're doing, but from the perspective of an analyst and a strategist, I would be remiss to say that if I had come up with this plan, I would be feeling pretty smug right now. And so we had that blocking order. Things get really hairy in June because we were talking about earlier. This is when everyone really started to talk about the critical munitions shortage. This is when the Pentagon had to come out and say, we're really pressuring the companies to produce us interceptors. We're allocating $80 billion and they're going to ramp those things. And we have numbers to talk about that as well.
And again, you can try to ramp all the production you want, but if you don't have any of the materials to fill the production, you're just giving money away.
It's free.
Because we have they got $1 trillion budget, basically, and we have not produced anything in return because they can't, because we don't have the capabilities here in the US. Part of that is a choice. I want to be clear too, on part of the rare earth mineral or the reluctance to mine rare earth minerals in the US is a choice. It is an environmental choice that our nation made to not destroy certain areas of the country by strip mining and taking it apart. That was a civilian choice to prevent our military and our government from
raping the land,
decimating and raping the land more than we already had. And what we're seeing now, there's a reason environmental regulations are being rolled back so quickly or ignored. There's a reason these things are happening, is because they need to start mining these things, because we, instead of continuing a push towards a peacetime system where we could have actually traded with China and we could have worked through diplomatic means to better their citizens' lives while bettering ours, we are now on the back foot, and it takes almost a decade basically to produce a real mine for rare earth minerals.
A safe mine.
This. A safe mine would take about 5 to 10 years to actually produce. And in wartime, that's not possible. You don't have that time frame, because in 5 to 10 years, you're either won the war or you're stuck in the war. And it's too late at that point.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there as part of this. Is the downstream effect of this is this is why they're opening up national parks and previously protected lands so that they can start strip mining and destroying it to produce the materials that they no longer get from foreign nations. If we even have them.
We must not allow that to happen, because I have to say this, China has paid dearly for this leverage. People in China get cancer at absurd rates. 3 of their 4 major rivers are so polluted that like the lifespan of people in China in these areas is like 30 something. In some cases, it does rape the land. It poisons the land. It kills people. It's not worth it. None of this is worth it. War isn't worth it. Like, none of this is worth it. Like, we're dealing with the impacts of this. You have to talk about the climate now. You have to have this discussion when they blow up a oil refinery in Ukraine and it fucking burns a ton of crude, thousands of gallons of crude straight into the atmosphere. That has an effect. Consequences, folks. This is the thing that I think the rich and powerful never really understood, because we allowed our society to enable them to live in such a way that they didn't
I
have to.
think they understand, they just don't care.
Right. They think they can maybe buy their way out. Like, there's a certain psychology of it, is that money will make it go away. And that just doesn't work. So the consequences are here now. But what I think is particularly unique about this situation is that for the first time, these are consequences they can't buy their way out of, because they bought their way into this consequence. They bought into this. They are the ones who chose to not diversify our military industrial complex, to not come up with safe domestic solutions, to get all of our materials and send them to China to be refined. They made these decisions, and now China patiently, when it is suitable for them and absolutely devastating for the United States, as we've now drawn down our stockpiles to critical levels, that now is the time. And so we can talk about what happened in June. And this is where things just went absolutely ape. MP Materials and USA Rare Earths were on an export control list. Okay, so that means that they now are able to basically regulatorily stiff arm them. They have to go through official Chinese companies. China's been pretty much phasing out those smaller providers that US was doing business with, and it's concentrated its control over exports and imports by kind of nationalizing that to a degree. So they have a lot of control there. But this destroys any US rare earth independent programs. Any capacity we have for independent rare earth processing and mining in the short term is destroyed. Keep in mind, if they want to build a new domestic option, they would need the technology and information and parts from China, which is now dual use and can no longer be used. If you think this won't affect their data centers, you're wrong, because those data centers are using and processing military data at the same time that they're using and processing our civilian data. They are dual use companies because they want to get as much money as they can. They all want a cut of that DOD $1 trillion fund. So they all, bought themselves into the room. And the other thing is, one might say, well, China needs us to buy it. No, they don't. The world's at war. China has the hottest thing. Everybody wants what China's got. Everybody's trying to build missiles. Everybody's trying to build tanks and guns and planes. There is no shortage of clients for someone to buy those materials. So what happened right after that, a second event in June, was a 46 firm procurement ban. And I have the whole list somewhere, but let me just put it to you this way. Just about every company that would be part of a US military supply chain, replacing equipment, things like that, has been put on a ban list. So we are now, they're saying basically, nope, no more for you. No missiles, no Patriots, no tanks, no radars, nothing for you. Meanwhile, Iran is blowing these things up, actively blowing these things up. So we're in wartime and we're losing those things. And then, of course, in 2026 of November, we see coming out, that's 92 days from now, an additional 12 rare earth elements and a full spectrum denial of just about everything is on the horizon. Whether they need to do that or not is kind of irrelevant. They've already done enough. It would just basically stick the dagger deeper, as well as a total gallium germanium ban suspension. That expiry is 109 days out. So that's what's on our horizon. I did an analysis in particular on the percentage of weapons that has been contracted versus what can actually be provided, what they can actually produce on our current domestic supply, right? Because it's really important that you basically say, okay, Nick was saying it earlier, we're giving them free money. This is how we prove we're giving them free money, by looking at this and saying, what is your actual capacity? So the U.S. contracted 384 well, let's go back. MP Materials and USA Rare Earth. This is why it's so important. The DoD now owns a 15% equity stake in MP Materials, committed to purchasing 100% of the magnets produced at MP's Fort Worth facility for a decade at 110 kilograms floor price. What does that basically mean? It means they put all their eggs in that basket. That's what that translates to. They gave them a shitload of money, and they basically said, we're going to buy everything from you. You're our out, because the writing was on the wall. They knew they needed a domestic alternative. So basically, the FDD, or the Foundation for Defending Democracy, confirmed that both firms are the largest recipients of U.S. federal investment in rare earth independence. So like we were saying, this was the plan. This was the plan. There was no backup. It was MP Materials, USA Rare Earths. We put tons of money into it, federal money, which shouldn't be a thing. We shouldn't be investing in private companies in general, but this is the Trump regime. So, there's that. Just like how we gave $12 billion from taxpayer dollars and then let the companies put in an extra $2 billion to go and buy up all of the silver and commodities and things like that. Again, another stopgap. But think about all the restrictions we're saying. Look at so many hoops. And it's those hoops. It's also the time, right? That China can kick that approval out as long as they want. So they're just kicking their feet. They're paying people. And they're not making anything. So we saw $384.3 billion in fiscal year 2026 DoD procurement and research. R&D is $205 billion procurement and an extra. So it's 200 in RD&E and then 1.7 in basically other munitions. So the important number here is 160.1 billion, or 78% of that is tied to direct rare earth magnet dependencies. So what can we actually make in the United States? So our rare earth production in 2025 was 300 metric tons. That's what we got. Okay. Our total demand, metric tons per year, 48,000. 48,000. We're making 300 right now. Our domestic supply covers 0.6% of what we need to honor those contracts. The procurement coverable by the amount of money coverable by our domestic supply is $1 billion, approximately $1 billion. And the procurement value at risk, you do some math, that's $160 billion that effectively has no industrial capability. It cannot be made. So what are they projecting for 2026? How do we solve that problem? Well, they're saying they're going to have 5,000 metric tons a year. The requirement still, and this is peacetime, just to clarify, this is all for peacetime. The requirement, they say, would be 48,000. So it stays the same, meaning we're still only covering 16 billion, 16.7. So a little more than 10% of what we need. Just at peacetime, still 140 plus billion dollars exposed to nothing. Right. Now, if we go into wartime, we basically double that just to be safe. Right. We need to ramp up our production. And even at that, our production at 2026 levels, which we have not achieved yet, would still be 5% that we can cover. And if it gets really extreme, which is where we're at, where they would like a 4X, they're trying to really ramp it up. We would be setting a 2.6% coverage with domestic supply, right? So that is pretty crazy, right? When we just sit with those numbers, Nick, what is like when you sit with those numbers, like what goes through your head?
What goes through my head is that we aren't prepared to fight a war.
Oh,
we're not prepared to fight a war because we purposely ramped down our domestic wartime production over the last 80 years
Mm-hmm.
or more. Like, we have done that on purpose and with the intent of stabilizing the world through diplomatic means and not as much through military means.
Yeah.
And what it tells me is that when we are critically low on interceptors, we will not be able to produce new interceptors. What it also tells me is we're not going to be able to produce the drones or manufacture the type of modern equipment that would be needed to fight a new age of warfare in the way that we want to, unless we strip mine and rape the land and decimate it with brand new mines everywhere and converting civilian production facilities into military production facilities. And yes, there are companies that are basically owned by the Pentagon and
Mm-hmm.
the DoD and other governmental entities that produce basically solely for the military. And that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay that we have companies like that. What it also tells me is that we don't know where the money is going,
Where is it?
because
Yeah.
we are not producing what the contract would value that we need to be producing at. And if you're unable to produce at those levels, typically in a business environment, is if you cannot produce to what you guaranteed, that's fraud.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
that money gets seized back
Yeah.
and returned because you did not live up to the expectation and you broke a contract. This is where we have the most fraud, waste, and abuse in our nation. And if we ever wanted to actually get fraud, waste, and abuse under control in our nation, we would have to take a really hard look at what our military is doing and where the contracts are going and who is profiting off them without any return. Because you can hand out all the money to a drone company you want, but if they don't have the materials and no way to procure the materials and no way to extract the materials, they're never going to produce the drones or the technology that you want. And that is wasteful.
Yeah.
It's also led to inflationary prices on materials and weaponry and unrealistic timelines, like Boeing and Lockheed Martin and other
Raytheon.
defense, Raytheon, where they charge exorbitant prices for things that don't need to be as priced as they are. Like, it shouldn't cost $500,000 or whatever it costs to produce like a propeller for a Apache.
That's an
Like,
important point. Is that's also the components to maintain the things we have now.
yeah,
They also make the parts, which means we are putting wear and tear on our weapons that exist, and they can't be maintained either. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
no, I think that's a really good point. Is that we're domestically, we also have wear and tear on our components because we do trainings. And the closer you get to wartime footing, another big shift that happens is the way that we train our service members. And when you start training on a wartime footing compared to a peacetime footing, there's a lot of exercises that you do. There's a lot of training exercises that you do. There's the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California. There is the
Miramar Air Base.
there's training centers in Louisiana for jungle training and for harsh conditions. There's training all over the world, all over the country that we do that requires the use of munitions, medical supplies, food,
Peacetime requirements too, right? That's just
peacetime requirements. But those peacetime requirements for training, your training levels are much lower in terms of wargaming. You're not practicing at the National Training Center twice in a year, let's say, for pre-deployment readiness. You're not going to the range and qualifying on your weapon quite as often in a peacetime. In wartime, you're doing that a lot because you need to. And that puts wear and tear, not just on, say, an M16 or an M4, but on the Apache that is flying, or the Humvees and the Strikers and the MRAPs and the F-16s or the carriers or any of those systems. You put additional wear and tear on them each time you use them, and then you have to then pay for the transportation cost to get them there and back. You then have to pay for the transportation costs to get them into theater. And these are things that we are not prepared to pay for.
No.
Or replace.
I think that I know we're at our time. I want to give you guys one last graph, one last data set, and then I'll let you go. We can always come back and look at these things another time. I also am going to be publishing this whole analysis. So all of this will be packaged in a much more reasonable way for you guys, but I just think it's really important. And the other thing I want to add to this is we are actively seeing these systems destroyed, like right now, right? So they're being destroyed. I can confirm at least 2 of these radars that we only had a handful, might have been a dozen or a couple more of these THAAD radars. They are we've seen multiple of them destroyed here. So each one of these radars destroyed weakens our air defense capacity. The more our air defense capacity is weakened, the more vulnerable these other systems become, the more these systems get destroyed. It's a weakening cascade. And again, so it's like we are actually losing things, not just to maintenance, but to direct destruction. And all of this goes back into what we've been talking about. But you know, they say, oh, you know, we can make all these things. So what have we done this year, generally speaking? And so a lot of this data, I just want to say, it comes out of a study that was put out in May, and then an Al Jazeera study as well. These things came out in July, but there's a couple caveats to this data. The first being it only accounts for the first 49 days of the war. But so there's going to be a little bit of variation here. They're also assuming no supply disruptions. There's a lot of assumptions they're making. A lot of these think tanks are just behind. They just are very well rooted in Western defense ideologies and kind of the stigma of American dominance. And it's taken them quite some time to catch up and realize that a great deal of that was projected and from a past era. There was a time during the Cold War when we were everything that we said we were. That is not the current situation. So what have we made? Our pre-war stock for the first 48 days here was about 3,000 Tomahawks. The Iran war, after 49 days, just about expended 1,000 of those. So we used about a third, right, of our Tomahawks. We've been fighting a lot more since then, though, too. Keep this in mind. This is a small subset here. Patriots, we had about 2,000. We used either between 1,060 and 1,400. So 45 to 61%, 45 on the low end. Our air-to-air missiles, our air-to-surface missiles, we used about 28% of those in those first days. The SM-6, which are the Navy missiles they use for interception, interdiction, things like that, we've used approximately 16 to 32% in those first 49 days. SM-3, another naval missile, 32 to 61%. A lot of ambiguity there. We don't really know how much we're using the Navy to intercept. It's a bit harder to get any kind of numbers on that because it's not like overland. They're mobile. It's kind of different. THAAD interceptors is probably the most devastating, with a total pre-war stockpile being at around 360, the low end being 190 used in this first 49 days. And the high end being 290, meaning we're looking at 53 to 81%. So with all of those numbers, keep in mind, we've been using those stockpiles. They're going down. And with the increased volume of strikes that we're seeing happen, we can then correlate that it's likely that these stockpiles are much lower now. And if they're using selective targeting or rationing, when they would usually want to use, say, 3 interceptors, and they're selectively using 1. We saw this happen with Israel in phase 1. I call it phase 1 and phase 2 because we've entered the terminal phase for the United States. The first phase, we were fighting at full strength. The second phase, we are now fighting depleted, weakened, beaten, and battered. So it's a very different situation here. And so with all that in mind, let's talk about what they think is possible to resupply without any interruptions, no rare earths, anything like that. So at current capacity this year in 2026, we've delivered 207 Tomahawk missiles. Air-to-air missiles, they are 500 a year. Surface missile SM-6s, 125 this year. SM-3 is 52. Patriots, 172. THAADs, 92. The contracted target they're supposed to meet is 1,000 per year for the Tomahawk. It's going to be, what do I do here? I clicked out of my thing. Go back here. Where'd it go? Sorry. What the heck? Where is it? Is this one? I apologize, friends. I was reading it and lost it. And
you lost it.
I have a billion things here. Let's see. Got it. All right. So now when we're looking at this, we have the capacity to meet the contracted target for the Patriots. They're ramping that up. I don't know what they think that's going to be. And basically, when we look at what they're making now versus what they're requesting, they're looking for a 4 to 5 time ramp on the Tomahawks and a 18.6% ramp on Patriots, 9 on 3. So what percentage of that can we make at current 2026 levels? Like, what's the gap? Tomahawks, we can meet 26% of that based on our productions this year. Patriots, 5% of the ask. Again, we're assuming no interruptions whatsoever, okay? Surface Missile 6, SM-6, 23%. SM-3, we can meet 24%. THAAD interceptors, the really, really advanced ones, including the radars, which are actively being destroyed, we can meet 11%. So we need to replace radars and we need to produce more interceptors. The only thing that we are meeting is our air-to-jet, air-to-surface missiles. Good job on that, guys. 100% can be met with no interruptions, except, and the air-to-ground missiles meet about 26%, right? So what I would say with all of that is we know it's more complicated than that. We know that there are barriers that they did not account for in that analysis. We know that we are seeing an increased volume of damage. If you look at the ratio of consequential attacks and strikes to Iran to the United States, it's statistically in favor of Iran. And this pausing, I would say, is my last thing. And then, Nick, I want to kind of toss it over to you to get your closing thoughts, is that when you are doing all of these things, you're looking at the initiative, you got to ask who has the initiative. Well, this consistent pausing and unpausing, to me, after observing this war for its duration, I would say that the pause represents phases in which the United States has taken considerable damage and needs to pause. And if we looked at our map, if you remember that from earlier, you'll see that there was a pretty substantial uptick in Kuwait, which makes me wonder, were those radars or Patriot launchers damaged at the time? Did we lose the ability to, on short notice intercept? Have we been degraded to that point? We need to ask those questions. Are we capable of defending our troops? Which is the question. Are we capable of keeping the troops in our bases alive? That is the only question for me, I think, that really matters the most. All of this stuff aside.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great breakdown on all of this, and it's going to be, I think we're going to obviously continue this conversation next week when we come back, because we got to talk about the tech side and the tech bros and the tech takeover of defense contract and contracting, because that leads all back to some of the things that we used to talk about early in our discussions with the monopsony and the Shyam Sankar of Palantir, who
revolving door,
the revolving door in, and those being added into the detachment 201 for defense and civilian integration for contracting and technology. And so we've got a lot still to talk about. But I think what a great comment here right at the end from Francis is exactly a great way to end it. Is we're cannibalizing ourselves for absolutely no reason. We did cannibalize ourselves. We cannibalized our defense ability to start a war that nobody wanted other than dominionists. And it comes back to is who is in charge and why are they doing it? And they're doing it to destabilize the region, to make themselves more profit, and to have dominion over an area. Because eventually we will contract back to the Americas, and then we will re-expand, and they will try and re-empire build from the ground up. And so this is just
let's just not let them do that.
We can't let them
spend
do
our
that.
money on other things like ourselves and healthcare and taking care of your neighbor and having nice paved roads and being able to adjust. And more importantly than anything, our government money should go into restoring all of our natural environments, because they are the best defense against climate change that all of this war is hastening, is the natural solutions that nature has had for us for millions of years. It's a planet based on these systems. Restoring mangroves will do more than $80 billion in R&D. Nature did the R&D, folks. It doesn't we are not so exceptional that we can do a better job than nature at regulating the environment. Instead of giving money to defense contractors, we should be hiring biologists, environmental ecologists. We should be bringing and saying, how can we breed beavers and bring back these animals to help our rivers? How can we restore certain environments to help mitigate and reduce subsidence in all of our cities, right? So there's money.
And like we've talked about in just what you talked about, but just what we've talked about in a lot of ways too, is reframing the discussion. Is we need to reframe environmental stewardship as national defense.
Yes, that's so good. That's perfect. It is national defense.
Because a strong, thriving environment and planet reduces the need for conflict over land. Because the more arable soil we can create, the better environment we can create, the less environmental migration there needs to be, the less destabilization, the less natural disasters happen, because the earth wants to heal itself. The earth is a living thing.
It's alive.
Is trying to heal itself, and we can hasten the healing if we reframe environmental stewardship as national defense.
That's brilliant.
And I think that's a great way to end on our show today.
Like that, I'm gonna quote that. That is brilliant. Yeah,
I love it. I'm happy about that.
You should.
And
you just made an episode.
I just made that up too. I just thought about that. I was just like, this is really what we need. Yeah. And another thing that Shane said is we can invest our money in things that are better than investing in defense contractors or investing in mega corporations. Come invest in Banner and Backbone. Come become a paid member, a subscriber, or a free subscriber here at Banner and Backbone. Like, come invest in us so that we can continue bringing you these conversations and discussions and this really good information. And go invest in Shane.
Thanks, guys.
Go invest in Shane. Like, put your money where it matters and invest in somebody who's doing really, really good, deep research and who is doing really thorough open source intelligence and open source gathering to provide high confident, reliable, consumable information that you can talk about and discuss.
Yeah.
And that's what Shane is doing. So Shane, take it
important.
away for yourself, dude. But you people, please come and support Shane and the work that he's doing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, guys, I would say the most important thing right now, Nick kind of said it, is having the ability to have the conversation. Having a conversation from an informed position is really the only way that we can change the dialogue, because there is literally so much BS out there. But the BS falls apart when you simply ask the question, well, how much can we actually build? Not what you want to do, but how much can we do? How much? The discussions themselves need to be had. And me and Nick can have this conversation, but more importantly, you need to have this conversation. Me and Nick can, do everything we can, but it's being, a firebrand, being a civically engaged member of Banner and Backbone means more than just being informed. It means driving conversation, driving discussion, right? A firebrand stands out in the crowd. They are bearing the torch. They are saying, look here, this is wrong. This isn't right. Listen to what I'm saying. Even if it annoys you, even if you don't like it, I'm going to make you carry that doubt. I'm going to make you walk away from me doubtful about how wonderful and perfect your thoughts and your position was. Because that's all I can do. All I can do for you is bring this to you, and I can get you this information. And that's all I'm going to continue to do. So if you want to support me in doing that, you can go ahead, scan the QR code, click my little fun little bubble up there, and subscribe there as well for free. There'll be something coming out this week. I might break it into a couple pieces. I'll have to decide. But there's a lot of really interesting information I have for you guys, really strong analysis coming out. We've got maps I've been working on. There's so many cool things that you can do. And go read my article from last week, because it'll be a good primer for what's happening this week. But thank you guys, and thank you, Nick. And please support my work if you can. Paid, free, all of it matters. And you guys are the reason that I continue to do this work, because it's really not it's really not fun. It's bad. It's hard. It's not a
glamorous role.
No, it's hard and it sucks, and I don't like reading about dead teenagers and thinking about them getting bombed every night. I don't like to focus on the cost, because there's always a cost to everything we see. Like Nick said, like there's suffering, this demand for these things, like it creates a vacuum for people to do bad things. And then you see those things too. And that's hard to look at too. So a lot of the cutback I've been doing is for my mental health, but I do it because I know that you guys count on me and that I offer something that you use. So I continue to do this work, and I'm passionate about helping you have that conversation. So your support really matters in a lot of ways. So I want to hype up Nick really quick. I know I went on for a minute, but I say this all the time. Nick is just an absolute warrior. Whether that be in the civic, the civic world, advocating for people with disabilities, whether that be driving progressive masculine culture, whether that be building tools to help influencers, having the right conversations, reach the people that want to have those conversations, or maybe even the people that don't. But in that, support Nick. And in supporting Nick, leave him a message when you go to be that paid subscriber. Send a little message and tell Nick, I want you to rest more. I want you to rest a little bit more. And I want you to put that in there as you become a paid subscriber, because we need Nick. we need to support Nick. Nick is doing the work that many people aren't willing to do. And for that, I am always very proud to sit up here next to Nick every time we talk and be an verbose supporter of this guy.
I appreciate you, dude. I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, come, please, if you can, come support the work that I'm doing at Sick of This Shit Publications. That's my other home. That's where I talk chronic illness, disability advocacy, and better humaning. And we're tackling a lot of issues that men specifically need to tackle. And we're challenging our own perspectives. We're growing, we're hearing, we're listening louder to people. We are trying to make ourselves smarter and more intelligent as men, but also just as basic humans. And so come support the work I do over at Sick of This Shit Publications. Paid subscriptions really, really help and help drive the work that I'm doing. It's also helped drive the work that I've done at Sick of This Shit Publications and here at Banner and Backbone has helped drive the development of the new broadbanner tooling and creator tools for a unified creator calendar and distribution mechanisms so that creators can get their content out and you guys can find all your favorite creators in one spot to be able to link to where they already host their live feeds from. So we're not trying to change the creators and their tools. We're trying to add in another tool set to their tool belt. And so we just launched that a week and a half ago. And it's finally live and I use it all the time. That's where I blast out all my content. That's how I distribute all my content for my notes and my text posts. But it's also where we are trying to make a home for more people. And that's what Sick of This Shit Publications is. And yeah, I probably do need to rest sometimes more. I'm working on it to make sure that I stay balanced. But I think I've found a good sweet spot right now. I think I've found a good sweet spot right now. And things are going well and moving forward. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for being here for a little bit longer than normal as we go just about 2 hours today, which is totally fine because we like to ramble on here at Palantalk. But that's okay. That's what we do. And so everyone, go have a great week. You're going to see Shane and I again next week. We're going to pick this conversation back up. We've got a lot more to talk about. Shane will probably have even more for us to discuss within this conversation.
Perpetual chaos.
Perpetual chaos and a perpetual lack. And there's never a lack of things to talk about on Palantalk because here on Palantalk, we like to talk tech.
No fascism. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Thanks, y'all.